Um, Amazing, we're recording now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taylor Choi. I use she, her pronouns. And as JD mentioned, I am the operations manager for Green City Market. Not only that, I am also a board member of the Illinois Farmers Market Association. So I work closely with Jamie and the work with the education committee there. So helping with trainings. And I was also a presenter at the From Food to Flowers conference the last few years. I'm super excited to be here. I know emergency preparedness is not the most exciting topic when it comes to us opening up markets this upcoming season, but I think very necessary for us to consider given we operate outdoors, and I feel like, life only gets crazier, especially when we're working in really crowded events. Before I get into my presentation, I just want to share a little bit about Green City Market. We're a nonprofit organization located in Chicago. Next year will be our 25-year anniversary. Our organization focuses on supporting farmers in the Midwest mostly, but I just wanted to share quickly. Over here on my screen, this is our website. So our mission is to secure the future food by deepening support for sustainable farmers in the Midwest, educating our community, and expanding access to locally grown food. We really like to think of our organization as touching on 3 different pillars, which is, again, farmer support, education, and food access. My work in the organization is to oversee all of our operations at our markets, work directly with vendors, and all of our special events. We plan a number of different events, such as a Chef Barbecue, which is a food festival in Lincoln Park outside in Chicago, and a number of different dinner and other fundraisers. I have about 7 years experience managing farmers markets, soon to be 8, and I've been with the organization for 6 years, and I've served on the ILFMA board for 1 year. That being said, I know I'm super young, but I'd like to say that, when you host a farmers market, it's like hosting a food festival weekly, multiple times a week. Our organization hosts 3 different markets throughout the year, twice a week in Lincoln Park, once a week in West Loop, and then one over the winter in the Chicago Avondale neighborhood. So we're really passionate about farmers markets and direct support for our farmers through doing direct to consumer and business to business interactions. That being said, let's get into the presentation. I typically do this presentation with another fellow board member of Illinois Farmers Market Association. He's not here today. His name is Dale Hazelwood. Him and I put together this presentation and have worked on it over the course of a couple of years. And so why are we discussing emergency preparedness today? All of you folks joined this webinar today because we know that emergencies happen either at our markets or in our lives. And so it's always important to plan ahead. I don't always think that you'll be able to meet every single emergency with a plan, but the more prepared that you are, especially in terms of anticipating severe weather, it absolutely helps to plan ahead. So what we're going to discuss today is how to handle severe weather, medical incidents, operational issues, lost people, or mostly found children and lost adults, robbery, theft, 911 emergencies. Extreme heat is covered under severe weather. And unfortunately, what we have to discuss nowadays is active assailant and what to do in those situations. Okay, I'm going to start off with us watching a very short video clip here. There's no sound to it, but this is at a farmer's market in the Midwest during a thunderstorm. And so what we're going to observe here is some security camera footage of what's going on. And this will help preface what we're going to discuss today. So let me go ahead, go full screen, and we'll go ahead and watch this video. All right, I know that many of us are off video right now, but for folks who have access to the chat, I would love for us to make some observations. What did you folks see when you were observing that video? Lots of flying tents. Good question. Were there tent weights? What else did we see aside from flying tents here? Weighted tents didn't help. Especially when you think about tents, there's essentially 50-pound wind sails in the air if they're not weighted. All right, those are some pretty good observations. Another thing that I wanted to mention infrastructure wise is that this market is located on, it seems like a public street here. Likely have a permitted, street closure for this market. But when that is happening, how are we ensuring that we're creating pedestrian and car safety here? And what I notice is that there is no situation where there's some barricades to separate what is car accessible versus pedestrian accessible here. So if you're operating on a city or just a public way here, making sure you're distinguishing what is pedestrian space versus what is car space. Another thing that I was noticing is because of that, a lot of cars are pulling onto the market footprint without making sure that there weren't pedestrians in the way. You see this like U-Haul truck kind of back in there without really looking. So let me go back to my previous slide here. Awesome. So I think as farmers market operators, we are not ignorant to any type of extreme weather that's happening. At the organization I work for, we are a rain or shine market. We believe that farmers are out rain or shine doing the work they need to in order to provide us sustainable, healthy food. We need to operate to make sure that there is an avenue of sale for them. I joke around with my teammates that there's no such thing as bad weather, just really bad clothing choices. But with that being said, it's really important that you as a market manager are checking the weather ahead of your market date. For example, if there is a chance of rain or precipitation, is there a chance of thunderstorms, things like that. And then to also pay attention to different weather announcements, whether it's severe thunderstorm warning versus a watch. So pay attention to different meteorologists. I wanted to give a couple of recommendations about some weather apps that I like to use. One of them is called Dark Sky. It gives you minute by minute updates of when rain is supposed to happen, lightning is supposed to happen, thunderstorms. And the other one is My Lightning Tracker. I'm going to pop them into the chat over here. The reason why I have two different apps is because not all weather apps track lightning, and our team uses lightning as an indicator of what types of safety measures we are going to put in place at our markets. So it is very common for at the first phase of a thunderstorm that there's going to be a severe thunderstorm or storm warning, meaning that there are going to be anticipated high winds, weather, lightning, thunder within a 20-mile radius of wherever you pinpoint that location for that weather service. Sometimes it's at the county level, sometimes it's at the neighborhood level, sometimes it's at the city level. When that happens, we are warning all of our vendors that we are potentially going to minimize our setup. Maybe if it reaches 10 miles away, which is when it becomes a severe thunderstorm watch, we are going to tell folks, hey, start minimizing your setup, tying down loose materials. And at 10 miles away, we are going to temporarily pause sales. If the storm, aka the lightning, gets any closer, let's say 5-mile radius away from the market location, we're going to shut down the market. But in the event that the lightning doesn't come any closer than 10 miles, we are going to resume the market. So those are a couple of apps I can recommend. There's also the old-fashioned way of listening to old-fashioned radio. If you have access to a radio, please make sure to take these forecasts seriously. In the event that there are high winds, in this case, we were watching this video, there were high winds. We saw these tents go flying. Figure out what your market's policy is when it reaches high wind. So for us, when there are wind gusts that are greater than 25 miles per hour, we announce to our vendors that please make sure that you at least have 25 pounds per tent leg. So if you have a standard 10 by 10 tent, that's 4 legs, which means you want 25 pounds in each leg, at least 100 pounds weighing down a single tent. If there are multiple tents, make sure that there are enough weights on each leg. So you're going to increase the number of weights that you do for your tent setup. However, one of our markets is located directly on Lake Michigan. And so we get lots more wind gusts than, say, folks who are more inset into the city. And so we incorporate into our market regulations and highly recommend that tent weights and the ability to instruct vendors to take down their own tent setup if it's a risk to market safety is incorporated into your market regulations. So that way you're, as a market manager, you're responsible for the success of your market as a whole. So you're going to pay attention to those things. So that way, if I see a vendor who doesn't have a correct or safe tent setup, I can instruct them, you need to take down your tent. Sometimes we call it going topless in our organization as a little bit of a joke, but we ask folks to remove their tents in the event that the wind gusts are more than 25 miles per hour. I want to give a really great example is that our opening day was April 1st. So a couple of Saturdays ago, and we had 45-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We had snow, sleet, hail, rain. It was around mid-30s to mid-40s in weather. Regardless, we're still opening up. We had a great turnout of 8,000 people, but what had happened throughout the day was we had our operations team go around to each vendor tent to check to make sure they were adequately weighted and or staked into the ground. Sometimes during a really bad weather day, it's important to have both stakes and weights as an extra area of safety. When we noticed that vendors were either not properly weighed down, or even if they had proper weights, but they were located in a wind tunnel, we instructed them to take down their tents. We also provided volunteer and staff help to help them take down those tents. It's important to have hands on every leg in the event of extreme wind because you want to make sure you have control of that tent, and having more people help take down the tent is better, especially during active market hours when we have customers walking around. In order to prepare for any sort of weather incident or any sort of emergency, make sure you have a contact list that you've created in order to alert important parties. So for us, we call it our chain of command. Depending on who's at the market versus who's at home, it's important to know who's calling the shots or who's having an eye on the weather. Usually what I'd say is have someone who is your top chain of command contact who is not at the market, because those folks will be multitasking, essentially looking at the weather forecast and also paying attention to what's happening on the ground at the market. It's really helpful to have someone who is not at the market, likely at an indoor location with access to internet, to see what's happening, so that they can make those calls without being distracted by the market. So for me, as I oversee all the markets, I am the person that's at the top of the chain of command, and I'm instructing all of my staff who are physically working the markets on what to do, because I have my eye on the radar. When you're minimizing your setup, put away any types of paper, light items, things that don't need to be out should not be out. And I'll go into this later, but this year we implemented an emergency text service, so we can text all of our vendors and volunteers at once of what are the different weather markers or weather incidents that happen, and what actions are we recommending and instructing folks to do at that time. So I know we already watched this video. we're going to move on to heat now. So in the height of the summer, especially for folks who are operating on pavement, it can get super hot. So the most important things to know about this is recognizing what is a excessive heat warning, heat advisory, versus an excessive heat. This is supposed to say watch over here. So heat advisory is greater than 95 degrees. Excessive heat watch is greater than 105 degrees. In any event, our market still operates under these conditions, but what we warn our volunteers and vendors about ahead of this day is that we're asking them to make sure to bring enough water. Our organization also sells water at our info booth, and on excessive heat warning days, we are able to give away those waters for free to all our vendors and volunteers, because the last thing that we want to do is someone passing out from heat exhaustion. Reminding folks to not wear dark colors, to make sure to wear light colors, loose clothing, not tight clothing, breathable clothing, and to also take frequent breaks indoors. It's important to recognize at each of your weather or market locations if there is a shelter place you can shelter in place. So for us, it's across the street at a hotel or inside a storage center across from another one of our markets, especially if there is air conditioning there, reminding folks to take turns going inside, getting cooled down, taking lots of water, and sitting down. When you are at a market, we all know that we're on our feet a lot. And so it's important to also staff extra people if you can, in order to allow your other staff or other team members to take frequent breaks. I think this is an important day to make sure you do have tents up, so that way you are staying in a shaded area. Is there a heat index in which you do close the market? I'd say every market should create its own policies where you're going to allow the market to open versus allow a market to close. For us, we don't close in extreme heat. We are very lucky not in a paved area. We're on a grassy area, and so it's a little bit cooler. Another benefit of being near the lake, aside from the thunderstorms and the wind, but really it's up to you. If you think that it's over 105 degrees, you're on pavement, because that pavement re-radiates that heat back into the atmosphere, and it's a lot hotter on dark pavement, and it's not safe for folks. I suggest you make that call with other people who are on your team. Another thing to do is to survey your vendors, what type of policies they're looking for. For our farmers, they believe that we should be open all of the time unless we're in severe weather. But there are some vendors that are like, it's not worth me putting my produce out in 105-degree weather. And in fact, it's going to hurt it, and I'm not going to be able to sell that material. And if you're a smaller market and it is that way, discuss that with your community members to see which type of policies are best fit for your markets. That's a good question. Okay, we'll move over to awesome. We'll move over to medical incidents. And I'd say the first step is to create a medical incident report. And I'd say this even for severe weather, to create an incident report, making sure that on that incident report you have who the incident is affecting, whether it's a customer, write in their name, areas for their contact information, address, phone number, email, information for your team member or volunteer who's taking down the information or the incident report, or who was directly there, information about what date, what time it happened, what type of emergency is it? Was it a medical incident? Was it a weather incident? Was it a found child incident? Write down all the details that exactly happened, and then all the details about how your team responded, and then mark down if there needs to be a follow-up of any decision. In addition, another way to prepare is to create a list of nearby emergency centers. So it could be a nearby hospital, a nearby emergency area, an immediate care facility, the example of how to call 911, which we'll go over in a bit, the local police department number, and then also the local fire department number, and here in Chicago, we do have the Office of Emergency Management, so we'll also include that number. And then also to take a CPR and first aid course. You don't necessarily have to get certified. Most folks don't require CPR certification in order to run farmers markets. But for us, we are having all of our team members take a CPR and first aid course and get certified for it. The American Red Cross has a really great program and a list of a directory of all of the CPR certification companies that are within your area. So I highly recommend going through them. Do you have examples of these reports? Yes, at the end of this slideshow presentation, I can show you guys some snippets of our emergency action plan, where we list all of these emergencies and examples of those incident reports, and we keep copies of blank incident reports in our market folder where we keep our permits and other contact info, but happy to show you those after I conclude the presentation. I feel like the most common medical incident that happens at our markets, aside from, Band-Aids for cuts and things like that, is people becoming unconscious. And so the first thing that we want to observe is this person conscious? Whether if they've fallen or it's heat exhaustion or some other medical reason aside from what's happening in the surrounding areas, is this person conscious? If they do need medical attention, are they able to give consent if you ask them if we need to call emergency services for you? The reason why I stress getting consent for this is that not all folks have access to an ability to pay for medical services. I know that the cost of an ambulance out of pocket for my insurance is $500, and that's even before you touch down to the hospital. Sometimes it is something they can resolve themselves, but all in all, we should always get their consent first. But if they are unconscious, the first thing that you want to do is call 911. And after you call 911 is to find someone who is a part of the market. Sometimes they will be trained to handle emergency situations like our team, but that way we can file an incident report and maybe get them water, any other things that were from our first aid kit that we're able to help them out with. And when you call 911, did you know that there is a recommended way that you should list the information that you're needing from 911? So the first one is to give your name. So, and then your location, who needs assistance. You may not know their name or anything like that, but from what you gather and observe, the gender of the person, about what age they are, what you're observing is that they're not responding to me calling their name or me tapping them on the shoulder. So you're explaining the nature of the emergency. If you're trained and qualified to take appropriate first aid measures, you do not want to move the person if they're unconscious, but try to make that person as comfortable as possible, and then remain at the scene until assistance arrives, and then be there to answer any medical questions from the staff. So I'll go through how I like to call 911. So we go ring, ring, ring. Hi, my name is Taylor Choi. I am at 1817 North Clark Street. I'm under the green tent at the intersection. I am with a gentleman who looks like he's in his 60s or 70s, who is unconscious and is not responding to me trying to talk to him or tap him on the shoulder. At this point, the 911 representative is likely asking me, is there anyone else that you've called? Also, what is your phone number in the case that the emergency services need to call you back? So you can give your phone number over the phone, and they're going to say, stay put, we're sending emergency services on the way. And from there, please cooperate with emergency services in order to give them the information they need. I think I heard someone pop off of mute. Did someone have a question? No? Okay, well, if you have a question, happy to answer that as we get later on in the presentation. Another emergency is lost people, but more often than not, it's a found child and lost adult. I think it's really important to create an incident report for this as well, where you want to create fields of the information of the person you may have found. The most important thing that happens when we have a found child is to never, ever communicate any of the child's information to the general public, maybe aside from people who are close on your team. The reason why is because if I say, oh, I have Julie here, she's about 3 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. So we advertise that information out. Anyone can come up to you and be like, oh, that's my child. Her name is Julie. She has blue eyes. She's 3 years old and has blonde hair, and can claim that's their child. In the event that you have someone that's separated from their party, is to escort them to a central location. For us, it's our information booth, and we will reunite all family members and parties there. Let the market manager know on this instant report you want to create and make sure it's private, only your team can see it. Write down all of that child or that person's information. More often than not, every time I've experienced this type of emergency, a parent and or their guardian has come and correctly claimed their child. If the adult comes up to you and it's like, hey, like I'm missing my child, what you want to do is to confirm the information that you've written on the incident report. So like, okay, what is the name of your child? What does your child look like? About what time did you lose your child? Where did you lose your child? Confirm that information with the incident report and the found person or the found child that you have, and to ask the child or the person, like, is this your guardian? Is this your parent? Is this person who they say they are? If they're able to confirm that, you can reunite the family or the party all together. And I also have an incident report example for this as well. When you are in any public space, not just your markets, we like to give this 3-word advice: watch, observe, and contact. So watch around you and your surroundings. At an open air market, especially on those pop-up tents, there are 4 places that on either side that someone could possibly, steal something or engage with you in an inappropriate way. So always be aware of your surroundings. 2, pay attention to any security announcements, whether that be weather reports or emergency emails. In the city of Chicago, we have like a Notify Chicago app, which allows you to get information about any type of emergency happening in your area, weather, traffic, things like that. And then understand who it is you need to contact. So that's why it's important to have that contact list of hospitals, emergency rooms, immediate care centers, police departments, fire departments. So that way, in the case you need to call an emergency management service, you can go ahead and get their number pretty easily. I don't love talking about this topic, but I think in today's day and age, we need to be very aware of an active assailant happening, regardless of whether it is a sharp object or a fire alarm. There is another 3-word process we like you all to remember, and it is run, hide, and fight. Getting away from the assailant is the top priority. So the first mode of defense is running away. I like to remind people, when you are running away, do not all run in the same direction as one another, because that creates a large target for the assailant to pursue. Run in different directions. You want to spread out, which minimizes the risk of everyone getting hurt, but less people getting hurt. If you are unable to run, you are going to hide. At the market, it's really hard in open air situations, but maybe you're hiding behind a tree, hiding behind a vehicle, under a vehicle, behind your tents, behind coolers, behind weights, things like that. And if you're unable to hide, the last resort is to fight back. Use whatever is around you to defend yourselves or attack the assailant. Again, using your weights, your tents, anything like that, knives that are on hand, maybe a prepared food person, you want to use those tools in order to help. And of course, if you do see any active assailant, the first thing that you should do is call 911 in that specific order and alert that an active assailant is on this premises and is either wielding a firearm or a knife. Be as descriptive as possible, in order to make sure that the 911 operator is sending out the appropriate number and the appropriate type of emergency services. I do want to discuss hiring security for your markets. I will say that that had not been an option for us for the first 23 years of us operating, but as of last year, we had an increase in number of situations that were outside the scope of what our team could handle in terms of emergencies. And so hiring security is a very expensive decision. For us, it's going to be about a $40,000 expense in order to have them at 3 markets a week during our outdoor season. We have them here so that way they are looking at everyone that is at our markets, attending to make sure nothing suspicious is going on, especially theft. As a farmer's market and you want to advertise your market as much as possible, we're basically advertising to people that we are open, we are selling things, there are multiple vendors. That means hundreds / thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in circulation at the same day, same time, and same location every week. So you are essentially a target. And so for us, our market garnered 350,000 visitors last year. We're anticipating to increase that number this year. So we made the decision to hire security because of such a large expanse of the market and the population that was attending. The history of the crime in our area would be car break-ins, different types of violence / harassment happening that were outside the scope of what we could handle as a staff. We decided to hire 1 security person at each one of our markets. We ask that they come in uniform so people are aware that we have security there, with their eyes on people who are here. It provides a greater sense of security for folks who are attending the market, but we also ask for them to be unarmed. In the chance that they need to escalate it and call the police, they are able to call the police as well as file any incident reports. But they are our boots on the ground as we are really focusing on strictly market operations now. We ask so much of our market managers to help out with markets, also help out with the health department and so many other things. Taking safety and security off your belt gives us more room to do the operations of the market. I wanted to get into additional resources here. So again, the American Red Cross CPR and First Aid training course is a link here. In terms of dealing with challenging personalities at the market and maybe wanting to de-escalate an incident from happening, NAMI Chicago is a really great training. In addition, I believe May 10th, ILFMA is hosting another one of these courses, but it's on conflict resolution. I highly recommend taking that one. And then in the next couple of weeks, we also have the Department of Homeland Security coming to give a presentation on how to properly secure your market perimeter. I highly recommend talking to them as well. We have someone from Department of Homeland Security coming to our market to do a walkthrough to help us assess any weak points in our market when it comes to security and safety, and will help us out. And then last but not least, the National Weather Service for official weather reports and any of those advisories that we're paying attention for. I wanted to make room for questions. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them into the chat or come off of mute. In the meantime, I'm gonna go bring up our emergency action plan and see if I can get those copies of the incident report for you folks.
Thank you, Taylor.